Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Multifamily Legacy Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Peterson, and I really want to make this episode, I'm going to make it kind of short because I just want to get a couple quick points out there. And I think the way I want to start doing this format is doing maybe a 15 or 20 minute snippet followed by, the 35, 45 minute podcast. So I can give you some pauses in between. But on the smaller ones, I really want to give you introspective of like what goes on in life, and I think how life works and how as people we work sometimes. And I'm sorry about that. I want to call this episode The Power of Solving Problems. In my life, I feel like I've never been that smart. I was never a great student. I never really had all the tools that it takes, I think, to like excel in test taking. It's never that hard to recall memories sometimes. Just sometimes it got cloudy, right? Is anybody out there like me? It just took a lot of work to try to memorize stuff in sequence. Now I could, but I always had to do different things to do that. But what I was really good though is at like solving problems. So I'll give you an example. In my younger years, we had VCRs and Betamax and all those things like that. And my parents would say, well, hook it up to all the stuff, Corey, make it work. And so that's what I would do. Now, what's crazy is it wasn't so hard to figure out. In every packet, almost everything comes with a little booklet. And it's usually called an instructions manual. And so I laboriously read the instruction manual and I figured it out. And I didn't read it always. It was nicer when they had diagrams. I could actually do diagrams faster than reading step by step by step, right? And I would figure it out. And I could put it all together and test it. All of a sudden, like, boom, here's how it works. And I feel like in my life, that's all I've ever mastered to do is to figure things out. My kids come to me all the time and they're like, Dad, can you do this for me? And part of me always wants to solve their problem. But what I've learned is that you have to let yourself, and even like in your kids, you've got to let them start solving problems. Because how are they ever going to get good at it if they can never have the chance to exercise that muscle, right? There's this wonderful thing in the world today called Google, and it's an amazing little thing, and you can pretty much find any how-to that you ever need. So, I don't know how to do perfect editing on Creative Cloud. So when I'm making videos like the one you're watching now, I might want to tweak the end of it, tweak the back of it, make a transition somewhere if I added another piece or some B-roll or anything like that. And so there's times when I first got into Creative Cloud, I didn't know how to make it work. I didn't even know how to like import my media correctly. And so I solved the problem. I went into Google and said, how do I import media into Creative Cloud? And clicked on the video file. I don't like the ones with all the instructions on. I got to watch a video. I'm way better with video, with pictures, with images. And that's what works for me. But there's something insanely simple and like rewarding about solving problems. Becoming a problem solver, I think, is probably one of the most, I'm not sure if it's the most highest paid position. I feel like it is. I feel like that's CEO quality, right? What do CEOs really get paid to do is to take problems that maybe seem complicated and they solve them with people. And a lot of times they're just giving people the right motivation to go find out and figure out what it is in that piece of the puzzle, right? And so stay curious to be like solving, like I'm always on a journey of knowledge. And for a lot of people out there, especially the ones who went to college, I feel like a lot of times that college degree was set so like you've got to get a college degree. And so learning was forced upon. They get to college, maybe they attain a master's, and at that point in time, the learning stops. And they stop like reading books, not just like, you know, you can read books like there's nonfiction, but then there's fiction. There's books on how to, things that invigorate your mind. And they stop reading those types of books and they become stagnant. And your mind becomes, and your brain becomes stagnant. If you're not using that muscle, sometimes it takes a little while. So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to break out of whatever mold. And so when you start saying, I can't, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you when you want to say, well, I can't do that. I challenge you to say this. How can I do that? Well, I don't know how to do email. I don't know how it works. Well, how can you figure out how email works? Right? Or at least just enough about it. I don't know how to build a website. I've never learned, I don't know anything about it. But how could you learn some of the basics? How could you? What would it take? 10 minutes a day for like 2 weeks? Could you smarten up? Could you get smart on the basics of websites? Right? Maybe there's ClickFunnels or some, there's lots of ways to just get a little bit smarter about like what it is. You don't have to be the expert. I'm not saying be the expert. But you need to know a little bit about a lot of things sometimes, and you can be an expert in one field. For sure, like deep dive into one field. I deep dive into multifamily. That's where I have most of my expertise. And even in multifamily, I'm even more specific in I'm really good at raising private money, right? So even in that niche, real estate, multifamily, private money, that's where I'm niched at. That's where I deep dived. But in that, I know about websites, I know about marketing, I know about direct mail, I know how to use CallRail, I know phone systems, I know a lot of things about business, I understand traction, culture, people having vision, mission, vision statements, right? And it's because I've been curious and I've always wanted to solve my own problems. And by solving your own problems, you just start gaining wisdom, you gain experience. You start having different interactions with different people and what works, what doesn't work. And so, like one of the problems I'm solving right now is how to get a lot more people on my podcast, how to get more eyes on it. And so instead of saying, well, I wish I could do it, I'm just not a guru. I'm not that talented. Or I can say, well, how can I find talented people? Who do I know that knows somebody? And so that's exactly what I did. My first step wasn't to go on Google on that type of step, was to go to my sphere of influence and say, is there anybody out there that knows anybody that does this at a very high level? Can you give me a referral first? And then I research that referral. I find out what they know, and then I'll ask them lots of questions, right? How do I do this? How do I know this is good? How do I know that you're good? Can you prove it to me? Can you show me? Can you give me case studies? How do I know that you're going to pick the right avatar? If I've got an avatar picked out, you're going to market to my right audience. How do I help make sure you do that correctly? Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see where I'm going? And so the greatest gift besides copying that I own, and really maybe they're the one and the same, is that I've always been able to figure things out and solving problems. And sometimes, you can take complicated, in my mind, there's people that they overcomplicate problems and they get all emotional and all stressful and all that stuff. And it's kind of like, well, hold on. So if you're going to solve this problem, what's the next basic step you got to take to solve it? Well, I need to do this. Okay. Then stop going on this wild goose chase of the 10 things after that and just go solve for X, right? It's like algebra. All you gotta do is solve for X and you will be amazed at what happens. And so I just want to encourage you as listeners of this podcast. There's been times when I felt like, man, I just don't have the skill set. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I've always had to challenge myself to say, well, how can I? How can I figure it out? How can I learn? How can I do it? Right? I'm not saying you got to do it all yourself, because I rarely do things anymore by myself. I've learned that you trade for goods and services, right? I didn't start out that way. I started out as a poor young country boy who had to do, who felt he had to do everything on his own, right? So like my first rehabs, I'll never forget them. I did all the painting. I did all the like drywall repair. I did the tile. I did baseboard moldings. I got a big scar where I cut myself right here on my finger because I wasn't using the right tools. And man, I did all those things like halfway at best, right? Not good. And man, that's just like sad that um, I fell into that trap of thinking, man, I'm saving money. I'm saving whatever. And a lot of times, in reality, you think you're saving money, but most of the times, when you're trying to find an expert, you'll never be an expert. You know, you can be an expert at one or two things, but not all of them. But you still need to have, in my mind, some general knowledge. General knowledge. But I just see so many people getting handicapped out there. Don't let yourself get handicapped by, I can't do something, right? That's hogwash. It's absolute hogwash. And you shouldn't allow yourself to ever getting that into that, like that funk. Like, God made you unique. He made you special. And like, we have brains and they work. Believe it or not, they work. So go use it and like solve your problems. Now, it may not get solved overnight. I didn't solve, you know, here's a problem I've never solved, right? I'm deaf in my right ear, totally deaf, right? Totally deaf. Got made fun of in grade school. You know, you hear that joke about Corey Peterson. Yeah, well, he didn't hear it either, right? Those kinds of things. All my life, I keep searching for a way to solve my problem. I've actually found a solution, and I'm going to actually, I think after this podcast, I might just go order it. I've done the research on it. They make a hearing aid now that I can put in this ear, and because of Bluetooth, it can now, this ear will never work. I'll never be able to solve that problem. But I solved the problem of me trying to hear on my right side. Because anybody that's on this side of me, I mean, I have to like creak my neck really hard to listen to them. And people are like, it takes little people like, why are you like cranking, you know? So, and then I say, hey, listen, you're on my deaf ear, right? But with Bluetooth that technology, now you can bridge it. Well, who would have known, right? And solve that problem just by being curious. Didn't think, well, I didn't think that, and I wasn't even sure they had the technology. I mean, I feel like they couldn't have the technology, but could they condense it into a small enough little earpiece? And so one day I was just curious. I'm like, hey, man, I wonder, that'd be cool because, like, I feel like my hearing's not getting any better, right? So maybe it's time to, take the plunge. And sure enough, it's been solved. And so by just being curious and trying to figure things out, here I am, I can hear out of the right side of my ear, which I've never been able to do. I never have. And so that's going to be kind of cool. And so I share that story with you because I just want you to understand, in life is a curveball, man. It is hard sometimes, but it doesn't have to be. And it can be the most rewarding, the most inspiring, the most fulfilling. But you've got to like put yourself in position to play ball. You've got to put yourself in a position where you can receive all the things life has to offer. And it will allow, you can rise as far as you'll let your mind go. Suck that in for a minute, right? As far as you can dream, you can achieve. Now, I have a new vision, right? There's a house in Hawaii, the Bruce Wayne house, Okay, I'm just going to claim it right now in front of my podcast. Okay, that home is up for sale right now for 3.4 million. I will own that house in 5 years. I promise you, without a doubt, with every fiber that I am, I will own that house within 5 years or less. And why? Why? Because it's something that it's a very definitive goal. And personally, I just want to become the big kahuna and like have an actual house in Hawaii. And as I was going, like I'm going next week to Hawaii to go do some video stuff and just really to tell my story of the Bruce Wayne house, right? And how it gave me the perfect vision of time and money and like what that cash flow life looks like. I'll never forget it. And I'm like every podcast, I just want to talk about it just for a snippet because I never want to forget that feeling and seeing that perfect vision of the cash flow life, not having any cares to this world and making money regardless of what you do. Man, that is a fun feeling. I'm doing it now. I don't have enough to own a house in Hawaii, but I'm telling you right now, in the next 5 years, I will own that house. 3.4 million. I'm not sure what it's going to be worth then. Who cares? I'm going to own that house, right? That's the power of the brain, and that's the power of like proclaiming your greatness. Don't ever be afraid. Don't ever be afraid. I mean, most of the people that are listening to this podcast, you're either really wanting to do real estate really bad or you're already doing fix and flip and wholesale. And like you are tired of that hustle and grind. You do want to level up. You do want more. You do want that cash flow life. And I'm telling you, you know, be bold in proclaiming that. You know, most of my fix and flip friends are like, if you've done more than 1 or 2 transactions, you're already a professional. I know that sounds weird. Like, oh, I did 1 or 2, maybe 3 flips. That's more flips than most people in America. Do you understand that? So proclaim that greatness because that's more than most will ever do. You're already setting the bar high. Now I want to challenge you to set it higher. And that's called cash flow. And the only difference is the words and maybe like the zeros. But don't let the zeros scare you because it's just a zero. It's nothing. And if you'll follow my steps and my guidance, man, I'm telling you, you can have a life that most will only dream of. Now, I've always been willing to do the work, and so do you, right? It is not like just think it and it becomes. It's think it, water it, dream about it, like feel it in your bones and your sweat, go work toilously, right? Laboriously, vigorously, with all your might. Set your sight upon what you want to do and achieve it. Start working towards that goal each and every day. Even if it takes a year, it takes 5 years, doesn't matter, does it? So that is my words of encouragement today, is go out, be the best you that you can possibly be. Go smile at somebody. Go open up a door for somebody. Just be a good person. Be happy inside today because today is your day. It's the day that you're going to choose to like put out some radiance for people to look at you and say, man, what does that guy have? Or what does that gal have that I'm missing? Because they just seem happy. Because so many people are just not. Don't let that be you today. Be a beacon of light for people. Do it and do it well. And remember, your paradise is possible, and multifamily is the answer. You have a wonderful, wonderful day.